Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another FanTeam Golf DFS show. I am joined today by Mr. Tom from FanTeam. How are you doing, sir?
Hello, yes, all good. Excited for Masters Week as always. Can't wait to get started.
Yep, it is the most wonderful time of the year for any golf fan in the world. It is the Masters, the first major of the year, the holy grounds of Augusta National. It is just simply beautiful. The course looks as stunning as ever. And today, me and Tom are just going to run down a quick rundown of each player in the field this week, if we like them or not. And then we're going to go into more in-depth detail tomorrow night with Mark, Nick, and Tom. This week we got a couple of different contests. So we got the normal €2 contest, which is a €1,500 prize pool. And we've got our first ever golf monster this week. So that's a €20 buy-in and it's €20,000 prize pool. That's very exciting. I cannot wait to get involved in that this week. We have got the daily showdowns, the player matchups, bets on the sportsbook, etc. And if you want to get into golf DFS a little bit more and you want to find out more stats, who's won what tournaments in the past, etc., head on over to Fantasy National Golf Club. FanTeam have got a 20% off discount code for any of their packages they do over there. You can sign up weekly, monthly, or yearly subscription. It's what me, Nick, and Mark all use on a regular basis on our Tuesday podcast that we do. So just head over to fantasynationalgolfclub.com/FanTeam and you will get 20% off any of those packages there. Great product, and I'm sure Tom will vouch for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think once you've used Fantasy National for Golf DFS, it's very difficult to use anything else. It's that good. So, yeah, absolutely. Love the guys over there. The FanTeam Masters contest should be up on there by the end of today. So, yeah, I would highly recommend it if you're spending more than a few pounds a week on Golf DFS, be it with FanTeam or anywhere else. I would struggle without it, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely, me too. It's very hard to find any of that data anywhere. Actually, you try and look for it for free. So just getting that 20% off that, it's a great package. Just go and try it out for the week. It's a fantastic tool to use. We're going to take a look at the players in the field for this week's Masters contest. The players vary for this, so it'd be like the top 50 in the world that get in. You got past champions that get in here. You've got like top fours from previous majors from the previous year. You've got winners from regular PGA Tour events that started from last year's RBC Heritage and run all the way up, as we saw yesterday. JJ Spawn winning the Valero Texas Open that got him into the field this week as well. So there's a number of ways to get into the Masters. Bit of a smaller field than what we're used to. 91 players in the field as it stands at the minute. And just be wary as usual. There might be a couple of withdrawals. I mean, we're going to get into the players in a minute, but there's a few players coming into the Masters with injury risk. Let's start at the bottom of page 6 here. So we've got a load of amateurs here. Lead Shepherd, Aaron Jarvis, is it? Yep, Aaron Jarvis there. I'm going to butcher some names down here. Stuart Hagstead. We got, oh God, I've lost the page there. Greaser, was that?
Yeah, these are all named Austin Greaser, I believe.
Austin Greaser, Jose Maria Olafable, Larry Myers, and Sandy Lyle. I have no interest on that page whatsoever with any of those guys. I mean, we've got a couple of past champions there: Sandy Lyle, Larry Myers, Jose Maria Olafable. I do believe the Masters have tried to persuade a lot of these guys to actually stop playing in the tournament as right now, but a couple of them seem to come back. Sandy Lyle, but I'm not expecting anything big from these guys down here.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying for anyone who's relatively new to the Masters. So a few amateurs getting to the field, having won various amateur events around the world. So that's why you're seeing those bottom 4 names there. Obviously, me and Jack know very little about them, and I wouldn't recommend them for your lineups unless you want to get seriously differential. You do then get, so if you win the Masters at any point, you get a lifetime exemption to play. So players like Sandy Lyle, for example, anyone new to golf will have never heard of him. He won the Masters, I believe, in 1988 from memory. Larry Mize
Correct.
probably slightly before then. So these guys turn up every year. Some of them don't even play regularly on seniors tours anymore or anything. So there's a possibility one or two of them make the cut, but they're going to do so by kind of grinding pars out. They're not going to be birdie machines. So yeah, I also really wouldn't recommend going down this line. I mean, you've got Larry Mize, I assume, must be about 65 by now. Sandy Lyle's probably into his 60s. So when you're comparing these people to, even newcomers on tour like Zalatoris, etc., it's night and day. It's like 15 handicapper playing the best scratch player at your local golf club. Just don't even consider touching them would be my advice.
No, and as Tom said, the Masters is, the course itself is long and it's an extremely hard course. So amateur wise, it's one of them courses you need to have played 3 or 4 times, isn't it, Tom? Really, before you do anything there. Most of the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we've had like Victor Hovland, for example, perform really well on his debut as an amateur and won the amateur medal a couple of years ago. But as far as I know, none of these guys who've qualified are kind of on that level that they're guaranteed to become superstars. I think I've heard of Hagestad before, but I wouldn't expect too much from the amateurs this year.
No. Let's move on to page 5. So we've got James Peer there, Vijay Singh, Kanaya Magalozi. There you go, I'm bad with names. Freddie Couples, Mike Weir, Bernhard Langer, Podrick Harrington, Charles Schwartzel, Harry Higgs, KH Lee, Danny Willett, Zach Johnson, Hudson Swarford, Mackenzie Hughes, Garrick Higo, and Nakaima. There's a few past champions here again. Bernhard Langer's one of them guys that sort of makes a impact on day one. Normally at the Masters, he's normally good for a first round lead half the time, and then he just fades away. He's timeless, isn't he, Bernhard Langer? I don't think I'll be playing him for DFS, but he's a timeless sort of player. He regularly wins on the senior tour.
Yeah, he's unbelievable on the senior tour, despite the fact that he's now probably 13, 14 years into his seniors tour career. So he's a guy in his early 60s playing against guys aged 50 who are, some of them like Jim Furyk, Mickelson, Stricker, etc. They're kind of fresh off the PGA Tour, having competed recently, whereas Langer disappeared to the seniors tour probably over 15 years ago now. So it's amazing how he keeps that record up. But no, certainly wouldn't be considering him for DFS purposes. He probably is one that could make the cut and does from time to time. But yeah, he's not going to be scoring heavily for you.
No, definitely not. Is there anyone that really does? If we go to the top end, then we've got, again, another past champion there, Danny Willett. Took advantage, didn't he? Back when Jordan Spieth had his major collapse around Amen Corner a few years back now, Danny Willett took advantage and won then. Charles Schwartzel, another one that took advantage of Rory McIlroy back in 2011. Mm-hmm. Rory had a famous collapse. I believe it was on hole 10 and then 11, which is hole 11, for anyone that's new to the Masters, is the start of Amen Corner. It's a free stretch hole. And the championship is normally won or lost around that stretch there. And Charles Schwartzel definitely took advantage of that back in 2011. Is there anyone that sort of takes your fancy at the top end there?
There's not a huge amount. As you say, there are some previous winners, but like when you look at Schwartzel and Willett, for example, they are still on the PGA Tour, but they both come in with really poor form. So I wouldn't be looking there. Zach Johnson for me is almost in the kind of old past champions still squeaking in because they won the Masters once upon a time. So I wouldn't look there either. Looking towards the top in terms of DFS plays, really off this page for me, it's probably right towards the top. So Mac Hughes has an exceptional short game. He's not in great form, but his short game could kind of sneak him through the cut, I guess. Garrett Higo has been pretty poor after a real breakout year in 2021. He is left-handed as well and a big hitter, both of which tend to help at Augusta. We see the likes of Bubba competing year after year. So again, he's another one who comes in on poor form, but maybe you could consider. And then probably the only other one for me there is Hudson Swafford. I have a memory, and I don't know if it's quite right, but I'm sure after the first few holes of the tournament last year on his debut, he was like 3 or 4 under. But then I've just looked up his performance last year, and he went 73-83 and missed the cut by 9 shots. So I'm pretty sure he had a fast start and then sort of bogeyed every hole after that. His form has been very indifferent, but he did have a really good iron week at the Valero. So he's maybe one you could consider, but I think all 3 of them that I've said there are pretty risky.
Yeah, no, definitely. And with Swafford as well, I mean, we haven't got no stats as of yet from Fantasy National Golf Club, but he is not. He loses a lot of strokes. I know that with his putting, and you need to be able to putt well around Augusta National to contend.
Yeah, I believe he's not great around the green either, so that really would worry me. You know, he's got to have a absolutely exceptional iron week to avoid a lot of long putts and chipping, etc. And on only his second visit, that probably is a very big ask, I would say.
Yep, definitely. Let's move on to page 4, and I think we'll start getting a bit more interested in some of these players now. So we've got Lucas Glover, Lucas Herbert, Stuart Sink, Cam Davis, Min Woo Lee, JJ Spawn, who won the Valero Texas Open, Matt Wolf, Steve Stracker, Thomas Peters, Harold Varner, Cameron Champ, Ryan Palmer, Harris English, who I believe has withdrawn, so just be wary of that. Tom Hoagie, Eric Van Rooyen, Seabez, and Brian Harmon. A few interesting names on this field. Brian Palmer's a standout one, been playing pretty well on the tour this year. Tom Hoagie's another one, been playing pretty well. Anyone that tickles your fancy on this page?
So let's have a look. So you are right about Harris English, obviously a relatively top player over the last couple of years, but he has withdrawn. So I will get that updated as soon as we get off this call. So elsewhere, I mean, JJ Spawn obviously is fresh off the victory, but that's a big challenge, isn't it, to suddenly be in the Masters 3 days later after your first PGA Tour victory.
Most definitely.
Maybe one you could consider just purely on current form. Lucas Herbert hits it a long way, but has been in relatively poor form, so I'm not sure I'd be looking there. There's not much that jumps out at me, to be honest, other than maybe Thomas Peters he's had one really good finish, I believe, at Augusta, and overall hasn't been too bad. He's kind of one of these that has all the talent in the world, doesn't necessarily have the mental game to match. He is a bit of a club thrower and a club snapper, but he's definitely one you could look to. He's got kind of the right kind of game for Augusta. Form is a little bit middling, but yeah, that's maybe one place you could look there. Towards the top, the 2 that would grab my eye. So Seabez, Besadenhout, I believe it's pronounced.
Yep. We'll just call him Seabez. That's what we.
Yeah, absolutely. He's another one like Matt Hughes that we mentioned a minute or so ago, who he has kind of the magic beans, like the Spieth effect around the greens. He really gets himself out of trouble with his chipping and putting quite a lot of the time. So he's maybe one you could consider. I'm just quickly looking at his Masters record.
Yes, I've got it up here. He's played this tournament twice. His best finish is tied 38th in 2020, but he has played it twice and he has made 2 cuts here. So you like to see that. You know, it's hard to come here as a rookie, like never played this course and make the cut. It's a very hard thing to do, and he done that on his rookie year here. So you like to see that, and yeah, it should see him in good stead this week.
Yeah, definitely. He's just looking at this year, he's made 6 out of 8 cuts on the PGA Tour, which is quite impressive. No great finishes. He's had a 14th, a 17th, a 20th. And I think in line with those two previous Masters performances, I certainly wouldn't fancy him for a top 10, but somewhere around the kind of 20th to 30th mark, if his short game's on, definitely capable. So at a relatively cheap price here, you could say he's potentially a good underdog if you're going for that kind of build. And then Brian Harman catches my eye right at the top of that range there. Main reason being that, again, he's another left-hander, and left-handers do tend to fare well at Augusta. He comes in relatively decent form, I believe.
He's either fifth at the Valspar, he's a third at the American Express earlier on in the year. He's only missed 2 cuts this year, which was at the Honda and Pebble Beach Pro-Am. So he's been playing relatively well. He's 3 top 15s there as well. What, another 14th place finish at the Phoenix. So he's been playing pretty well this year.
Yeah, so 12th at the Masters last year, which is really, I mean, he doesn't hit it a long way, but for, again, being left-handed helps. And 12th in last year's kind of firm and fast conditions is pretty impressive. 44th back in 2018, and then a miscut way back in 2015. But so there's a little bit of pedigree there, and as I say, I think the left-handed factor will definitely come into play. So Brian Harman for me, definitely one to consider.
Definitely. I know I mentioned Tom Hoagie there. He has actually never played the Masters before, so I would approach with caution. Let's move on to page 3, and we'll start at the bottom. Mr. Kevin Kisner down there, he's been playing excellent as of late. Excellent WGC match play performance from him. Lee Westwood, who has very, very good course history around Augusta National, may have left it a little bit too late in the day to try and get a win here, but the course history, you like to see it. Kevin Na, Francisco Molinari, who had that he just collapsed, didn't he, in 2019 when Tiger hunted him down. He had the collapse on number 12, Amen Corner, along with Brooks. They were both in the same group. Tiger was playing behind them and Tiger hunted them down. Luke List, Cameron Young, Gary Woodland, former major winner himself there, Robert McIntyre, Seamus Power, Si Woo Kim, Max Homa, Jason Kokrak, Bubba Watson, former 2-time winner around this course, a left-hander again, knows how to get it done around here. Patrick Reed, another one who's won this tournament before. Mark Leishman, Billy Horschel, and the ever reliable, as I put him in an article I did yesterday, Mr. Justin Rose around Augusta. He loves this place, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess this is the point at which let's start kind of going player by player and just give our thoughts. So Kisner, for me, obviously he's been in great form. He played ridiculously well at the match play, as he always seems to, and does have a decent record around Augusta. Like the last 5 years, he's basically neutral for strokes gained against the field. For me, the upside is a little bit limited there. I think, he may well be a safe made cut, but how much more you can get out of someone that short off the tee, I would question.
Yep. No, agreed.
Lee Westwood is a funny one, Westwood, isn't it? Because he obviously had that real kind of purple patch coming into the Masters last year, and then really has kind of dropped off again. Just quickly having a look at obviously he's played the Masters forever and does have some really good finishes. I suspect, however, they are kind of in the past. So miscut last year, 38th, the previous one that he qualified for, and then you're going back to kind of 2017, he was 18th, and then second in 2016. So the history is definitely there for Lee Westwood, but when you look at his recent form, I mean, last 6 events, so you've got miscut 42, 68th, miscut, and I don't think he was very good at the match play either. So, and he's another one who I think is going to rely more on pars than anything else nowadays. So it's a bit of a nostalgia pick, but not for me.
Has played this tournament 20 times and made 16 cuts though, and he's had 2 second place finishes, like you say, 2016 and back in 2010. But I do fear that he's on the wrong age sort of side now to compete here. Like you've mentioned, this course has been lengthened massively compared to even back when he come second in 2010. So, Kevin Na, any interest there?
He used to be one that I always liked at the Masters some time ago. As you say, I mean, it's another one in this bracket, isn't it? Of the extra length that the course has makes it more and more difficult for someone like Kevin Na to contend. But on the flip side, he's got one of the best short games in the world. So it's it's a tricky one. I think he's definitely one to consider. Obviously played well. I think he got out of his group, didn't he, in the match play? So he played well on his return after I believe he was off for kind of parental leave. So yeah, he's one you could consider. 12th last year, 13th in the November Masters. So there's definitely pedigree there. So yeah, I think Kevin Na again, he's one you could consider. I think something we haven't talked about so far is kind of how different Augusta can play depending on the weather. Kevin Na, obviously, if he does have a great short game, he has great wedges. So if it gets wet and he can just plonk the ball by the flag with his wedge, then great. But on the flip side, his drives aren't going to be rolling, so he's coming in with longer clubs. So it's as you can tell, I'm a bit unsure about Kevin Na.
No, it's interesting that you've brought the weather up. Actually, I've said it before as well. Like with the weather and things, it's certainly something worth taking into consideration. I actually removed the 2020 Masters from my model because all the players even come out and said that it played completely different. Like if you was a rookie that year, you was at a massive disadvantage playing in November than when it's normally held in April. It was held in November just due to COVID. That was the reason. COVID was sort of kicking off just about when this tournament was due to start, basically. So they moved it back to play it in November. Dustin Johnson eventually won it. We'll get onto him in a minute, but it played completely different, and I just remove it from my model completely. I don't include it at all.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Next up, I briefly mentioned this, Francesco Molinari. I mean, he looked like he was going to win it back in 2019, and then Tiger hunted him down in Tiger fashion, and the collapse eventually happened, as we've seen with many great golfers when Tiger's hunted them down before. Any interest there? It seems like to me, from looking on the outside, to me, it looks like Francesco Molinari has just sort of rediscovered his game, and for me, he lost. That Masters is when he kind of lost his game, when Tiger hunted him down. So it's taken 3 years now to rediscover a little bit of form. Is there any interest there? I mean, the course history's there.
Yeah, the course history is there, but just not much else for me. I'm just looking at his recent results here, and the last 12 tournaments he's played, he's got a 6th at the Amex, which I think is kind of a bit of recency bias. We're like remembering that and thinking, okay, he's back. But then in his other 11 tournaments, best finish of 42nd at the Players when he was on the good side of the weather draw. So, yeah, to me, it feels a bit like a false dawn, like he sort of burst back onto the scene at the Amex earlier this year, but the rest has been pretty messy. And his last 2 Masters since that 2019 collapse haven't been good. So, no, I just think you're reaching a bit when you don't need to reach here.
Yep, no, agreed. Let's move on to the next player, which is Team No Putt. So Luke List, and I've mentioned that you need to be able to putt around this place, and I mean Luke List is not going to pop in any putting stats at all. But is there any interest there? I mean, he's been playing pretty well this year.
Yeah, this is a really funny one, isn't it? He's got a bit of a funny game because he is great off the tee, hits it a mile, great with his irons, great around the green. It's amazing for someone who hits it so far. Luke List's around the green game is immaculate. But then, as you say, he could easily be the worst putter in the tournament. So it's kind of, I guess it's a question of what do you weight most highly here. I think, to me, his putting is just so bad week to week, and that's just going to be exacerbated at Augusta. I think it's a stay away for me. The weird thing about Luke List, I assumed it was his debut, but he actually played the Masters in 2005, which I can't get my head around. Like, he can't have been more than about 13 years old, so that's a bizarre one. But
that must have been a rookie year. He must have played it as an amateur or something.
Yeah, I think so. I believe he's local though, isn't he?
Yeah.
So that's basically everything is in his favour, other than the fact that he can't put. So yeah, it's probably a maybe for me, I suppose.
Which is kind of important around Augusta National. You need to be able to putt. So, Cameron Young, who's been playing excellent on tour, and I've got a funny feeling he will be very popular this week. Any interest there?
Yeah,
debut there, isn't it?
It is. He's so suited to Augusta in theory. Obviously, again, hits it an absolute mile. He's been in amazing form. Even at the match play, didn't get out of his group, but put up a really good showing there on a course that wouldn't necessarily suit him. I think you're right. I think he is going to be very popular, especially among people who maybe have come to golf this year. You know, if you've only played golf DFS this year, you probably think Cameron Young is a top 10 player in the world. He isn't. But he could be one day. It's kind of a game theory one for me, I think. I like the idea of him at Augusta, but if he's going to be like 15, 20% owned, I would sort of err on the side of staying away, I think. I think it's a risky play. And if you're building in like 20% ownership, I think it's a risk that doesn't necessarily need taking.
Agree, and like we've mentioned, like with rookies around Augusta, they tend to not do particularly well outside of Will Zalatoris, who come second last year. It's not. I mean, the last rookie winner here was 1978, I believe. So it's not a happy hunting ground for people that have never played this course before. Let's move on to another former major winner. He's not won this tournament before, but Gary Woodland is a major winner in his own right, and seems to have found a little bit of form at last and trending in the right direction coming into Augusta.
Yeah, definitely. He has played really well since coming back from that injury. Certainly coming in this year very hot. My concern with Woodland, I'm getting a bit negative here, but my concern with Woodland is that if you look at his Augusta record, even in the years when he was a top player, it's just no good. Why that is difficult to say, because you wouldn't think it's a course that would overly trouble him. I mean, he's got a pretty good all-round game. For just looking over the last 50 rounds, he's kind of top 50 in every stat category, but something hasn't worked for him at Augusta. I prefer others around him, I think. How about you? You got interest?
I mean, as a I do multi-entry anyway, so yes, I will have a bit of exposure to Gary Woodland just based on how he's been playing. But you're right, he's played this tournament 9 times and only made 5 cuts, so there's a little bit of volatility there. And I mean, his best finish is a tied 24th back in 2011. So for some reason, he hasn't quite cracked it. But I like what I've seen from him this year. I mean, he was on the wrong side. The Players' Championship, again, something else I just completely take out of my model this year, because Gary Woodland was on the wrong side of the draw there. And if you like what you've seen before that, 2 5th-place finishes, a 21st there at the Valspar and 8th at the Valero Texas Open. He's been playing well. So, yes, I will certainly have a little bit of Gary Woodland sprinkled within my lineups this week. Let's move on to a couple of debutants. So we've got Bobby Mack, Robert McIntyre there, and Seamus Power, both playing this course for the first time, both in different form. Robert McIntyre not been playing as well as he did towards the back end of last year, and Seamus Power didn't start the season hot, but seems to have found his game again.
Okay, so we'll start with Bobby Mack, and just to correct you slightly, he did actually play last year.
Right, sorry, my bad.
And did come 12th. So you're disparaging the first guy that I would say is a definite play for me. So big hitting Scott. So obviously straight away you think Augusta at times can be windy. He can play in the wind coming from Scotland. As I say, 12th on debut last year, which is a pretty damn good performance for a debutant at Augusta. He's left-handed, and I'll keep coming back to this. Left-handers do tend to have an advantage at Augusta, and he's fairly neat around the green. So, yeah, Robert McIntyre for me is definitely an interesting play. I don't think he'll be very high owned, so he's one I would definitely consider. Whereas Seamus Power, I just don't know with him. You know, he was on this absolute fire run, having been kind of a journeyman all through his career. Then he dropped off again. Now he seems to be coming back to form. Obviously, his first time at Augusta. I other than his recent form, I don't really have any reason why I would play him. So it's probably a stay away for me, but not with any strong reasoning.
That's fair, definitely. Let's move up. We'll go to Siwoo Kim, who has played this tournament 5 times, has made 4 cuts. His best finishes are tied 12th. Augusta, to me, seems like it sets up perfectly for Siwoo, but he can be a very volatile player at times, can't he? And you don't know what you're going to get from tournament to tournament with him.
Yeah, historically, he does seem to be sort of, I don't know if it's because he's getting a little bit older now, although he's still only like 26 or something, isn't he, somehow?
He's 26,
he feels like he's been around. Yeah, it feels like he's been around a while, but he does seem to be finding a bit more consistency, just trying to count them up quickly. He's made his last 10 cuts, which for Siwoo is amazing. I mean, he used to, you know, he's known as the poster boy for missed cut, second missed cut, you know. Whereas he seems to have found a bit of consistency in all 10 of those last 10 tournaments. He's gained strokes off the tee, he's gained strokes on approach and around the green in the vast majority of them. So, yeah, for me, he's a definite play. Another with sneakily good Masters history in the last few years. He's got a 12th, a 34th, 21st, and 24th in his last 4 appearances. So, yeah, he's not one I'd consider, you know, betting to win the tournament, but I think he is starting to show that consistency and he's got consistency at Augusta. For me, he's pretty good value there, I think.
Yep, no, definitely. I certainly have a sprinkling of Siwoo Kim this week. Let's move up to Mr. Max Homer, and the stats for Augusta National for Mr. Homer do not look very great. He's two times he's played this tournament and 2 missed cuts. So can he crack it? Seems to have found a bit of form again after that miscut at the Farmers Insurance Open. They've all been top 20 performances since then. Obviously got on the right side of the draw at the Players. Any interest, or does that previous form here worry you?
I think the previous form and just his form generally in majors would put me off. He's kind of like the modern day Siwoo. You know, he's another who can make a string of miscuts, then made cuts, then miscuts. It's a bit all over the place. Yeah, it's a stay away for me. He's got the game to do it, but I think I'd like to see him do it first.
Yeah, no, agreed. Let's move up to, well, Mr. Saudi League himself. He's come out and openly said that he wants to play on that tour. So Mr. Jason Kokrak at 14.4 million there. Played this twice in the past, has made 1 cut. His best finishes a 49th place finish. Nothing to shout home about. And yeah, it's the recent form is a miscut of the Valspar, but just before that, okay, sort of middle of the pack. Any interest in Mr. Kokrak, or again, is it just
it's a major form, though, isn't it? There's the Masters form, there's the recent form, neither of which are great. There's the whole live golf thing hanging over him, and he's historically, he's been a lot better in the last couple of years, but historically he's dreadful around the green, which probably explains his Masters form, to be honest. So no, good player, but not at this course for me.
Let's move up to two former champions here. So we've got Bubba Watson and Patrick Reed. Bubba Watson's obviously won this tournament twice. Seems to love this place. There's a famous, if you've never seen any of the Masters footage before, there's a famous, I believe it was the second time he won it, and he took 13 on, which is a par 5, and he literally drove the ball over the trees, which is just amazing. Like Tom has mentioned, this place is set up for left-handers, and Bubba is a brilliant left-handed player who can shape shots to no end, and his game really does suit this course. And Patrick Reed there, who also loves the course, makes a lot of cuts here as well. I'm probably going to have a sprinkling of both within my lineup, so I don't know about you. I'm not really worried about the previous form for either of them either, because I know they can get it done here.
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? I think with both of these, and maybe even Leishman above them, if we want to chuck him into the mix. He hasn't won the Masters, but he's got an amazing record here of nearly winning.
Yep.
I think all three come in fairly indifferent form. I didn't even realise till I've just looked that Bubba actually played the Valspar and missed the cut. Patrick Reed has been in terrible form since switching to PXG clubs. So I think and Leishman was pretty dreadful at the match play and recently as well. So I would say for all three of these, it's, do you trust the recent form and stay away, or do you trust the long-term form, the Masters record, the quality of player, and go with them? I do quite like your idea of kind of sprinkling them in if you're doing multiple lineups. They're not the safest plays, but all of them, their eyes should light up when they start driving down Magnolia Lane towards Augusta, hopefully. So, definitely ones to consider.
Let's round off this page then, and we'll just finish up with the man in form at the minute. He's making a lot of cuts, Mr. Billy Horschel, and Mr. Consistent himself at Augusta National is Justin Rose. I mean, he just loves this place. So I've got a funny feeling I'm going to be very overweight with my shares of Justin Rose this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one that we could chuck into that same bracket as the three we just talked about, isn't he? You know, the form isn't great, especially the irons are at times atrocious in the last couple of years. But like you say, great record around Augusta. So he's probably another one that you just need to take a stance on. Do you trust the recent form or the historic stuff? For me, if I was to consider him with Reed, Bubba, and Leishman, what order would you put those four in? I think I would probably go Bubba, Rose, Reed, Leishman.
Maybe? I think I would go Rose, Bubba, Leishman, and Reed.
There you go. So we're not keen on Reed then. Definitely one to consider. Billy Horschel, as you say, is kind of playing the best golf since that year when he kind of blew away the FedEx Cup playoffs. He's been in absolutely amazing form recently. Hasn't missed a cut since the US Open, which was 10 months ago. So in theory, super safe play. The drawback with Horschel is you look at his Masters record and it is not good at all. I think
I will correct you there. He did miss the cut at the Players Championship, but for me, I removed that from my model anyway. But I'm putting it out there that he did miss the cut there. But I mean, this is as I say, this is why I'm going to be so overweight on Justin Rose this week. I mean, it might come back and bite me, but 16 tournaments played at the Masters, 15 cuts made.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I've never seen a mistake on Fantasy National before. Billy Horschel has no players record, which is interesting. But for me, Horschel can stay away because I prefer these kind of guys with good course history around him. Rose is definitely one of them.
Maybe they've just wiped the players off as well, like everyone else.
So. I mean, like you say, it was a bit of a nonsense tournament, wasn't it, with the weather intervening so badly. So, it's definitely. I do agree with your stance that you can kind of throw out the players and you can throw out the Masters when Dustin won it in November 2020, just because it was so different to what we're going to see this week.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, when you got the players coming out saying it's completely different and it was unfair for rookies that played it that year, then that tells me all I need to know about it.
Yeah.
Mr. Webb Simpson, we mentioned the injury. We've gone to page 2 now. We mentioned some injured players coming into this event. He is on that radar, but has seemed to have found a little bit of form again. Come 48th at the Valspa there. Again, miscut the players, but we don't take that into consideration. Has okay form around here as well. Tied 5th back in 2019. 10 tournaments entered and 7 cuts made. I personally will be having a decent amount of Webb Simpson this week. I like what I've seen from him since he's come back off the injury, and I think I can trust him again within my lineups.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. For me, I would say no. As you say, he does have decent Augusta history, not stellar, but decent. I'd just be worried that since he's come back, so we've got a couple of events there. So the players, obviously, if we throw that out, he was okay at the match play, and then he was okay at the Valspar.
Yep.
And if someone like Webb Simpson, who's a relatively short hitter with kind of good but not great Masters pedigree, is kind of playing okay currently and coming back from an injury, I just worry that the upside is relatively limited, whereas the downside, if he's feeling that injury or if he's not quite on it with his irons, the downside is probably a miscut. So yeah, it's not for me, but I can see why you've got interest there.
I'm going to put these two in the same category because I think they're both going to be quite popular this week. Tommy Fleetwood and Matthew Fitzpatrick both playing quite well. Tommy Fleetwood, I mean, in danger of losing his PGA Tour card due to his form last year. Seemed to have found a little bit of form since the Honda there. I mean, you've got 3 top 25 finishes there, and the Players is one obviously, but seems to have found his iron game again. And course history, he's played it 5 times, made 4 cuts, tied 17th, his best finish in 2018. I like what I'm seeing from Fleetwood. I like both of these two as well. Like Fitzpatrick has been brilliant this year on the PGA Tour. Obviously, the miscut of the Players, but 9th and the 5th there, 10th at the Phoenix Open, 6th at the Pebble Beach. I like what I've seen from both of these two, and again, both I will probably have a heavy dose of both of these within my lineups.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I would prefer Fitzpatrick, I think. Just a bit more of a kind of stable game, for want of a better word. If you look at his stats since he came to the PGA Tour this year, 4 out of 5, in fact, all 5 events he's gained on approach, he's gained around the green, 4 out of 5 he's gained putting, 3 out of 5 he's gained off the tee, but the 2 where he hasn't gained are only tiny losses. So he's got that all-around game. He seems to have added a bit of distance, which is something that historically would hold him back a little bit. And good Augusta track record. So I think Fitzpatrick is really, really interesting, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, he's played this tournament 7 times and 6 cuts made. You like to see that. Russell Henley and Corey Connors. I'll put both of these two in the same bracket again. Corey Connors, a very good iron player. We know that. Done okay last week. He had that bit of a collapse, didn't he, at the Valero on, I think it was day 3. He just sort of fell away, didn't he? And come 35th overall. Any interest in either of those two, Henley and Connors?
Connors definitely yes. I think he's another one who potentially his putting could hold him back a little bit, but he's in very good form. I think you're right. He had a bad Saturday at the Valspar, but I think from memory he was like 4 or 5 under yesterday, so immediately bounced back. I do think Connors is a relatively safe play. He has started his Augusta career well as well. Henley's a bit more of a difficult one. He's in decent form, finished 13th in both of his last 2 events, pretty much doing it all with his irons. 11.5 strokes gained with his irons at the Players. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, that's what you like to see.
Yeah, in my head, he didn't have a very good Masters record, but then I'm clicking through. He's not played since 2018, but he had a 15th, 11th, 21st, 31st, and then a missed cut, but that was like 9 years ago. So, yeah, there's some decent finishes there. Obviously, it's a second shot golf course ultimately, and he's one of the best in the world with his irons. So, yeah, I'd want to dig a bit more into Henley, but it looks interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's someone I will take a little bit more in-depth look at once we get some more stats up. Former champion Sergio Garcia won in a playoff against Justin Rose a few years back now, 2017. He's played this tournament 22 times, 14 cuts made. He's first played this tournament in 1999. I can't remember who we were talking about. Lee Westwood. I think I've kind of put Sergio Garcia within that bracket now, although he seems to be, I mean, he's younger than Lee Westwood. He's 42 still, but
Yeah.
he seems to have found a little bit of form this year, but I kind of put him in the same category as Westwood now, where he's just on the wrong side of the age mark for me for this tournament anymore.
Yeah, same here. I'm just wondering if I've clicked the wrong player, but I haven't. So he's played 3 events on the PGA Tour this year.
Yeah.
If I said to you, Sergio Garcia has lost 8.3 strokes on approach in those 3 events, you would expect massive missed cuts, whereas he's actually finished well because he's gained exactly 10 strokes putting in his last 3 events. So for anyone who's familiar with Sergio's game, that is not Sergio's game. He's normally a terrible eyes closed putter and brilliant with his irons. And the last 3 events, he's done the complete opposite. That would terrify me, to be honest. That's just an immediate stay away, even though he's got the history.
I would laugh at you if you'd told me that, because that's just not Sergio Garcia that I'm used to seeing. So, yeah, for me.
Sorry, you could argue the flip side, couldn't you? You could argue, well, if he's found it with the putter and he's done something that suddenly fixed him, he's one of the best players in the world. But do you believe that?
No.
Yeah, that's worrying to me.
I tell you who I do believe in, and I've got as much interest as I did have for Justin Rose, is Paul Casey at 15.7 million there. Loves his place, 15 tournaments played. First played it in 2004, 11 cuts made here. Best finishes are tied 4th here. I like Paul Casey this week, and I would have a heavy dose of him along with Justin Rose, I think. Third of the players as well.
Yeah, the only thing that you can argue against Casey is he obviously kind of willy won't he in the match play. He turned up for his first match and played a few holes, then withdrew. Then stopped playing. Turned up to the tee for the second match and then decided not to play, and then didn't turn up for the third. So there's some kind of injury concern there. So that's the risk you're taking. Although, as you say, everything else is in his favour. And it probably means a bit lower ownership, that little injury concern. So if you're happy to gamble on him, there's nothing else that can put you off, really.
Definitely. Speaking of injuries, let's just move on to the next player. It's Abraham Ansah, who, I mean, there's a rumor going around that his withdrawal from the Valero Texas Open was injury related, which I suppose it could be true because I didn't actually know this until the other day that the Valero Texas Open is his home course. So why would he withdraw? He'd be sleeping in his own bed. It's a bit odd that he's withdrawn from that tournament. So I guess it's wait and see. But 2 tournaments played here, 2 cuts made, best finish tied 13th in that 2020 Masters, which was held in November. Can you get over the injury concern? Is he in a void for that reason now? Or, I mean, he hasn't been in the best of form, has he, this year anyway?
No, pure avoid for me. I think the injury is such a mystery. And having listened to a bit of stuff, it sounded like he had quite a lot of family at the, preparing to go and cheer him on at that course. And then he doesn't play. So it just all feels a bit worrying to me. And I don't think he's overly well suited to Augusta anyway. I wouldn't say he's not suited, but what he does well is relatively limited by Augusta compared to other courses. So, yeah, for me, I just think that's a risk that you don't really need to take.
Let's move on up then. And we've got Mr. Feisty himself, Tyrrell Hatton. We've mentioned about Thomas Peters, but Tyrrell Hatton can be put in the same bracket as Thomas Peters. There's played this tournament 5 times, 3 cuts made, best finishes a tied 18th, which was last year. Has come onto the PGA Tour playing relatively okay. He did have a bit of a meltdown out in Qatar on the European Tour earlier on in the year. Launched his club, and there's some explicit rants from him. But you can't do that around Augusta. You can't have a meltdown the way he can. I think I will have some ownership because I multi-enter, but it will be limited.
Yeah, he's one you need to take a stance on, isn't he? As you say, capable of a complete meltdown, quite reliant on the putter at times. He's not for me. The Augusta record isn't great, and you kind of question, well, is that just natural variance, or is that because the mental pressure at Augusta is ramped up so much? And if you can't cope at Qatar, at a tournament that you've probably been paid to play, he's probably getting most of his money just through an appearance fee. If you're having a meltdown there, are you going to cope if you get into contention at the Masters? And I think at these prices, you're starting to want people who can get into contention. So for me, it's a stay away, but it's one that he could just flick a switch and make you look very silly. And he's good enough to win it, but he's also mentally good enough to not be here come Saturday morning.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll start blasting through some of these players. I'll put these 2 in the same category here. So Joaquin Niemann and Tony Finau. Neiman's form here, just 2 tournaments entered, 1 cut made, tied 40th is his best finish. I don't particularly have not Finau, that was Neiman, sorry. Finau has good course history here, but I don't like what I've seen from Finau at all this season.
So, I think we talked about this when we did the players. I don't think Finau's been quite as bad as it's been made to look. And he has certainly found his form again in the last couple of events. So I have quite a bit of interest in Finau. Neiman, probably similar, actually. So Neiman, in theory, should be a really good fit. He was just terrible at the match play, is probably the only kind of question mark I've got. I would say they are both worthy of a bit more consideration, and there's no huge negative against either of them for me.
Interesting. I've just looked back at Tony Finau actually the last couple of tournaments. Yeah, he's not been as bad, like you say. 4 tournaments played here, 4 cuts made and tied 5th. So the course history, you like to see that. Speaking of course history, does he, don't he? Mr. Tiger Woods, the 5-time champion around this place. I've said on previous podcasts before that he can only win on 2 golf courses now in his career, the way he's out with the injuries and things like that. This is one of them. Now, do I think he can win this year coming off the injuries that he's coming off? It's Tiger Woods. I can't ever write him off, but it would be some achievement, wouldn't it? It would certainly outdo 2019 if he won this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a completely different kettle of fish to the comeback in 2019. I think, you're coming back from so many medical issues, and even now he's sort of saying, I'll see how I feel over the next few days. That's a guy who really, really wants to play, but definitely isn't sort of back to peak powers. So for me, I mean, it's kind of everyone's focus, isn't it? Will Tiger play? Everyone can't wait to see him. I'll probably have a little bet on him. I'll probably consider playing a little bit of him here and there. But it's kind of because I want him to do well rather than I really believe that he can win this thing.
Yeah, listen, guys, if he just tees it up this week, that's an achievement in itself. We'll just breeze through these top lot here, and then we'll just move on to page 1. I'll put them all in the same sort of category anyway. Adam Scott, Sung Jae Im, Taylor Gooch, Sam Burns, and Shane Lowry. I am personally going to be having a heavy dose of Adam Scott, previous winner around here as well. The only thing that worries me with Adam Scott is the putting. Even when he won it, he looked shaky. He had that long-handled putter, didn't he? When he won it that year, he looked shaky with the putting that year. But Adam Scott's probably my favourite player out the top lot there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. I completely agree there. The rest, I think there's a few question marks. But Adam Scott, certainly playing well, good course history. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Let's move on to page 1 and then we'll get out of here. So down the bottom there, we've got Louis Oosthuizen, Daniel Berger, Bryson DeChambeau, Will Zalatoris, Hideki Matsuyama, the reigning champion around here, Brooks Koepka, who turns up for every major going, Xander Schauffele, the Olympic champion, Jordan Spieth, a former champion around here, so the meltdown around here as well, Patrick Cantlay, Cam Smith, who's won the Players' Championship, a man very much in form, Rory McIlroy, who needs this one to win the Grand Slam, to complete the Grand Slam. If Rory does it this week, we'll see what happens. Victor Hovland, his rise in the golf world rankings is just incredible. Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, who's many people's favourite to get it done around here. Dustin Johnson, the 2020 champion around this place. Scotty Scheffler, who's just, again, the world number one, a man in great form, 3 tournaments won this year already. And John Rahm. We'll start at the bottom quickly there. Just who takes your fancy at the bottom lot? For me, it's probably, I like Brooks, personally, just because I know what Brooks does when he turns up to majors.
Yeah, can't argue with that one. I'll just quickly running up from the bottom. I know you guys will talk about these top players at length tomorrow. So Louis, always good here, in decent form, definitely one to consider. Berger has horrendous history here, and we saw at the match play at courses where he doesn't have great history, it does kind of seem to continue. So not too much interest in Berger. Bryson, God knows what's going on there. Too many injuries, form.
He's a funny one, isn't he, Bryson? Because he basically said that he said Augusta that it should be a par 67 or something like that a couple of years ago, and then he missed the cut. So yeah, good luck with that, Bryson.
Yeah, there's just not much to go on there, is there? Poor course form and all the injuries and twaddle like it's a par 67. It's just not for me. Zalatoris was fantastic on debut, and he's definitely one I would consider. Again, the putting would be a slight worry. Hideki is another one, quite a bit of injury concern there, and hasn't played well whilst trying to play through this injury recently. So last year's champion. The other concern I have with Hideki, just quickly, is obviously when you are the Masters champion, you then host the Champions Dinner the next year. I would just worry that will weigh quite heavily on someone like Matsuyama. He's a guy who is very kind of media shy. I don't know if he does speak good English now, but I know he's used a translator kind of throughout his career. So I would imagine doing the Champions Dinner and things like that is probably quite daunting for him. So on that kind of very non-scientific basis, plus the injury, it'd be a stay away. Yeah, I agree. The first name you get to that shines there is Brooks. Amazing Augusta record, amazing majors record, not amazing
playing
pair,
better,
but yeah, playing well. I really like Brooks.
Just move to the top quickly. Xander, Spieth. I mean, Spieth's course form around this place is just absolutely brilliant, despite the collapse that he had last time out. Patrick Cantlay is an interesting one. Gets on the east coast of America and doesn't really turn up. So that's I had him to win this a couple of months ago, and I've kind of cooled my interest on that as of late. I think Cam Smith's going to be very popular this week. Rory off of a letdown. Again, good course history around here, but just the meltdown. And like you're saying with Matsuyama, the pressure of trying to get that win and get the Grand Slam completed it must weigh heavily on him every time he turns up here, because it just gets mentioned every time.
Yeah, definitely.
Victor Hovland and Colin Morikawa both got the game to win around this place, but it's hard, isn't it, with them top four? Any one of them could win it. I think John Ram has definitely got the game for this place, but you worry with the strokes that he's losing around the green and on the green itself. But I think Justin Thomas has to be the favourite for me going into this.
Interesting. Fair enough. Yeah, I think the favourite for me would be Cam Smith. I don't expect him to be the betting favourite, certainly, but he's added length. He's winning big tournaments. He has the magic beans. He's almost like kind of super Jordan Spieth at the moment. You know, he's playing like Spieth did at the height of his powers, and he's added a bit more extra length. I really like Cam Smith from that top end. I agree with you on Rory. I just think people have got excited by the fact he's been playing a little better, but then he turns up to the Valero and misses greens with wedges from 80 yards away, you know, and it kind of feels like it's setting up for another first day 76 at the Masters to me. I think if you're going to base your teams around Rory, you are gambling a lot. Whereas if you're basing your teams around Justin Thomas, Cam Smith, Cantlay, Xander even, Brooks, you're gambling a lot less. That's kind of the way I look at it. Yeah, and then right at the top, as you say, Rahm, recent struggles around the green and putting, but that's not something historically that's the problem. Scheffler's the world number one, DJ a recent winner. I think you guys will figure out this page tomorrow, but I couldn't put anyone off any players on that first page apart from probably Rory, maybe Berger and Bryson. I think the rest of them you can put into your lineups and feel like you've got a potential winning ticket. It's that difficult this year.
Definitely. It all gets underway on Thursday. We cannot wait. We are so excited. Tom, just quickly, the big one is the Monster. Obviously, it's a €20 buy-in and a €20,000 prize pool for that. So, how many entries can we get into that? How many max entries is that? Sorry, as well.
100 max entries per user. Obviously, I wouldn't expect many people to be entering 100, but yeah, it is by far our biggest tournament. So we have upped things slightly there. And yeah, obviously the leaderboard that we've been running over the last few weeks has now been paid out. So people should have their tickets. If anyone listening to this finished in the top 50 of the WGC bracket challenge we ran and hasn't let us know who they are, please do so because we owe you a ticket. But yeah, it's I was explaining to some of the guys what the Masters is for golf and them being non-golfers. It's kind of like, well, it's the World Cup final, it's the Super Bowl, it's WrestleMania, you know, it's every huge sporting event rolled into one. That's how golf fans feel about the Masters, which is why we've put up that big prize pool and is why we're so excited about it. And just looking at that first page, you know, if you looked at it 10, 20 years ago, you'd kind of have Tiger sitting there and then a few top players, and then the rest you'd kind of be scrubbing for trying to make a team. Whereas this year, you look at that whole first page and virtually any of them have a good chance. So it's just such a great field and such an open tournament that I think that Monster is going to be super, super exciting.
Definitely. I will be back tomorrow, guys, with Nick and Mark, and we'll get into it even more detail. We'll have a lot more stats and things like that for it. But get involved, guys. Like I say, the Monster's open, the mini contest is open, the day 2 showdown's open. So just get involved. It's going to be a great week. It's going to be 4 days of heaven. And thank you for joining me today, Tom. And thanks for everyone for listening. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.